Back at the Wargaming table with Troops in Contact, or TIC. This is in my ongoing attempt to put together more or less standalone videos, Wargaming related. This is a set of rules that I'm kicking around, testing, experimenting with. Again, working title, TIC, or Troops in Contact. I have so much to go over that I really don't know where to start, so a lot of this is just committing ideas to video so I can come back to it. A lot of things are working out well. So I'll jump right in. Again, in no particular order. There are some questions that I have jotted down that I will be getting to. These questions are going to be more along the lines of, designers, notes. Even that sounds too formal. More like a design approach or design diary almost, which I guess many of these videos in effect are. So the questions are, why play this game? Why play this game? And again, I'm not going to address these questions now. I'm actually going to devote separate sessions to these. So yeah, so I won't say anything more about that other than list these. So I'm thinking, question, why play this game? Next question, where are the leaders? Where did the leaders go? Next question, where is initiative? Next question is, where is morale? And then last, I would say, is kind of a general question of where are a lot of familiar terms and concepts and mechanics. Where is close assault? Right now, I'm only thinking in terms of close combat, not close assault. If you want to do close assault, you have to basically work for close assault. Same hex combat is close combat. Whether it's close assault or not depends entirely on numerous things. Where is advancing fire? Where is where's even opportunity fire? So on and so forth. So where are a lot of familiar topics and concepts? So those are a collection of questions. These are questions that the reason why I jotted down these questions and why I want to come back to them is because if I feel as though if I can't answer these questions satisfactorily for myself, then I don't have as good a handle on the design process here as I would like. So that's that. Again, in no particular order, a movement. I know normal movement is based on tactical marching rates as outlined by U.S. Army Infantry Doctrine. So I will have double time. I actually don't like the term double time exactly. But when units are double timing, they are trotting. Trotting is the action that I think of. And there will be triple time, which again, don't like the term triple time, it's running. So basically you're advancing, which is normal movement, you're trotting, which is double movement, or you're running, which is triple movement. And I have a starting, play test version of how to handle this, which I'm happy enough with for now until I again begin play testing it. So I have a working model for how to do this. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this, considering that the rules are based on action periods of 15 seconds and 4 action periods being an action cycle or 1 minute. And on top of that, basically 4 action points can be committed to actions. So how to handle double time and triple time. I had a question on that, but I've come up with something that I'm going to work with for now. This game is primarily an infantry game. I've just now started to introduce the very basics of vehicles, but this is primarily, and the vehicle rules are already less distinct and detailed and involved, which is the way, it's not necessarily the way I want it, but I'm comfortable with that because this is primarily an infantry game. Vehicles are in support, and well, yeah, that's it for now. I will definitely be talking more about vehicles. Okay, so as a primarily infantry game, key to the model is, of course, direct fire, indirect fire, observation is huge, and then added on to that, I will be getting to engineering, different aspects of combat engineering. I will be getting to chemicals, and I'll even be getting to EW, or electronic warfare, in some way, shape, or form. An idea, an idea that I thought of a few days ago, several days ago, out running in the early morning before the sun up. So I was running along there, and I was thinking about the rules here, and thinking back to my days in the infantry, where especially in the light infantry, although we definitely did it in the mechanized infantry as well, but especially in the light infantry. Well, I guess I'll start with the light infantry. In the light infantry, doctrine, training is based on the concept of basically at first light. Actually, well, let me back up. At first light, you are 100% combat ready. So that means that when you're in some type of patrol base, the moment there's that first sliver of light, you are 100% combat ready. So that means everything's packed up. That means every soldier is in a fighting position. Weapons are at the ready. You are 100% combat ready. I think that historically goes back to this being one of several especially vulnerable times for the infantry, and so basically first light, you're 100% combat ready. But to be 100% combat ready at first light, you actually have to start. We started with not even light. So before light, you have the change in, what is it? I can't even remember the technical terms we used to use, but basically when the sky starts, when the sky just starts lighting, which is well before actual sunlight. So starting from that time, we would start an hour, and in some cases even 90 minutes before that, getting ready. And incidentally, in the light infantry, I know my experience in the 101st Airborne Division, getting ready you still have to do that while maintaining security, some level of security. Of course, you still have to do it, with no light signatures, with as little sound as possible. So understand that it is actually a long and tedious process. I guess if I can give a sense of this, to start with, your two-man fighting position. Your two-man fighting position, two-man fighting positions is of course a fire team position. Two fire team positions is a squad position, and on up. But start at the very, very bottom. Your two-man buddy team. So when I say a long, tedious process of getting ready for that 100% security, you're going, backward, or you're alternating. So like, I would be in the prone, in the fighting position, providing security, while my buddy does some task, pack up something, and then he pulls security while I do the same thing. Then I pull security again while he pulls all his equipment back from the fighting position, and then we alternate back and forth. So basically, with each two-soldier buddy team, one is pulling security while the other is doing some task, slowly, quietly, again, no light signature, anything, going through these motions. And a trained unit can do this. It's actually rather impressive to see, an entire platoon going through the motions in complete silence, no light, la la la, while never dropping below 50% security. But anyways, those were all memories I was having as I was running early in the morning, still very dark, cold. So I was remembering all those experiences. And then I was thinking, when I transitioned, when I spent time in the mechanized infantry, your vehicles present a whole new challenge. But anyways, without going into those stories now, I was reminded of sounds. I don't think Hex Encounter war games ever really deal with this. And again, this is just ideas. I have no idea how this might be incorporated, but a vehicle makes a huge amount of sound, and the infantryman on the ground is attuned to these sounds, obviously. But how would a game deal with this? It seems like games are always assumed. Well, the reason why I wonder about this, it's not even the right word. The reason why I'm thinking about this is, it occurred to me, okay, I guess all of our games are always assuming that vehicles are running, when in fact in the mechanized infantry, your vehicle is never running unless it basically needs to be running. There are all sorts of SOP, standing operating procedures, that deal with when your vehicle is running and not running. So anyways, I was wondering if that could possibly be incorporated. I mean, I think that if a game at this scale and scope, so this is 25-meter hexes, 1-minute action cycles broken down into 4 15-second action periods. These are fire teams and crews and individual vehicles. So at this scale and scope, if there's going to be any special emphasis on night actions, which I don't see why there is not going to be, then maybe vehicle sounds could be brought in some meaningful way. Okay, moving on. I definitely got the idea from others I was talking to during a recent video chat. I have to emphasize that I got this idea from them entirely. It didn't even occur to me to think in terms of basically mini campaigns. I was thinking about this. I had an opportunity to really focus on this past week, and I think what I'm going to go with is it's a mission. So a mission is in effect a mini campaign. I think a mini campaign is what many would recognize, that term mini campaign. Mini, by the way, has nothing to do with length of gameplay or anything. Mini campaign just has to do with this campaign might represent combat operations over half a day. So that's the mini part. Okay, so it's not a campaign. Normally, of course, refers to something at a much higher scale or scope for sure, and scale as well. But it is a mini campaign in that it would feel somewhat like a campaign, but it's mini because it could represent actions in only a morning or an afternoon, evening, night, whatever. But it's a mission. Mission is what was most I went through many different terms here, considered many different terms. I'm going with mission. Mission, I think I had a number of reasons why I'm going with mission, but primarily it's because in my mind, when I start developing, these mini campaigns, I'm definitely going to be pulling from a lot of different sources. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about the first one shortly. I should get to it this session. But I'm going to be pulling from a number of different sources. And one of the sources is my own experiences. And thinking I've experienced in Iraq and Afghanistan. I emphasize that because these are very different theaters. So they're going to have very different missions. I also have experience in Kosovo, which actually will, I'm determined, this is a personal thing of mine. Kosovo and 1990s stability operations are not going to be completely overlooked here. But anyways, that's a whole nother chapter. So anyways, thinking back to, in particular, my experiences in Iraq as a platoon leader, which I guess would correspond especially well to the scale and scope here, although company commander in Afghanistan will also apply. But I think I want to work on platoon/patrol actions first, and then probably get to company actions. And I have no plans to go higher than that. I think company team or equivalent missions is the way to go. I don't think I want to get any higher than that. And by the way, I want to point out, this is not an arbitrary thing. It's not an arbitrary thing. If I were to go one echelon up, you're going to the battalion. Well, battalions are the first level, the first echelon that have a dedicated staff, that have a staff. And the situation starts changing. The model should change to represent other things, different things. So that's one of the reasons why I think I'll keep it to below battalion. One of several reasons. So then a mission, I think, is a good way to go. That mission properly conveys what I want to convey. So a mini campaign is going to be a mission. So what that means is the mini campaign is going to have one unified, in game terms, a mission statement. Okay, it doesn't have to be a military type mission statement, but in game terms, you have one kind of unified goal that you're after. Then the mission mini campaign will be broken down into a number of basically segments of action, which are your individual games. Now I went through multiple terms. I considered scenario. Scenario is a term that I'm really not a fan of. I know it's so widely used, I got that, but scenario is a term that Just doesn't. I'm not a fan of it. But anyways, that's personal. That's a personal thing. I considered, encounter. I considered contacts. So a mission might be made up of, well, a mission would be made up of multiple encounters, or a mission would be made up of multiple contacts, or a mission would be made up of multiple firefights. That was the term I was using earlier. I had, after giving it some focused thought, all of those terms had limitations and drawbacks. And so I finally went with situations. So a mission will be made up of a number of situations that represent like the key, points of action. Now, what I'm thinking of, I haven't gotten this far. I mean, I've barely laid out like a concept for the direction I want to go. But I am seeing that a mission would be arrayed as a, 3, 4, 5, 6 step kind of a network, not network, but a tree of outcomes. So branches basically. And so branches. So you start with your first. Situation, and depending on how that situation turns out, you branch out. Branch out to two different possible situations, and then it branches out more, and branches might come back together again, but it'll be a mission will be made up of 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7 steps of these branched situations. Now, the reason why I finally went with situation was because I did realize, ooh, wait a minute. I do not, when I was going for firefight, contact, encounters, and so on a couple more terms, they all assumed that there was actually, that there was actually contact. And I remembered, ooh, wait a minute, there will be situations where one side does not want to make contact at all. And I think that these could be interesting. I mean, these would never be interesting in kind of the normal, traditional war game scenario context. But these could be interesting because not making contact could have interesting ramifications for the flow, the branching of the mission. Not to mention that it's not uncommon for there to be many situations in contemporary combat where one side is trying to avoid contact entirely. So in that case, there would be a situation, because you could play through a situation. I would hope they would play fairly quickly where there's no contact at all, and then you would go on to the following situation according to that outcome. So yeah, so a mission, which is generally defined as a kind of overall goal for each side, and then broken down into a number of situations. How you flow through the situations will depend on outcomes of each situation. So that's the general idea there. And then I mean that's I think primary. Secondarily, I think that maybe each situation presented, which is also part of a larger mission, has at least a variant, a standalone variant. Yeah, a standalone variant. So, in other words, you could pick any situation and follow the directions for its standalone variant. But if you don't play it as a standalone, then you're always playing it as part of a larger mission, in which case, the setup and the parameters and everything are as per the mission. Okay. Oh, here's another big thing. Again, another idea to come from discussions with others. Hadn't even occurred to me, but the spending of mission prep points before between situations. This could be very interesting. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking, what does this represent, or what might this represent? How might this be justified in a design sense? And I was thinking, is it really? I mean, on the one hand, you say, why would there be mission prep points, preparation points? Because isn't everything set? And again, I was thinking back to my experience as a platoon leader in Iraq, and also true as a company commander in Afghanistan. But that's just the company commander in Afghanistan is just building on the experience as a platoon leader in Iraq. And in fact, when I think back, so before Iraq as a platoon leader in training, everything is set. Everything is set for you. You essentially have no choices before your training. You're training as a platoon leader, mechanized platoon leader in my case. What that means is, your ammunition is set, your signals are set, all of your parameters in a training environment are set. You still plan. Of course, you do your graphics. You plan your action, your mission. You do up your order. You brief it, rehearse it, blah blah blah. But as far as mission preparation is set. Even the number of hours that you have to prepare is set. It's basically all set. And what was interesting in my experience. Now, I was a platoon leader in the 1st Infantry Division, mechanized platoon leader, the 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry in Samara. And bottom line is, this is my experience, when we deployed, and when I deployed as a platoon leader, everything changed. It was 180 degree. I might be overstating that. It was a major change, and frankly, in my experience, it was a sea change. What I mean by that is, in training, the battalion commander, let alone the company commander, dictated so much. And like I said before, in training, everything was basically dictated. Again, not the planning part. I'm saying the parameters were dictated. How much time you had, what equipment you had, was all dictated. Almost immediately upon hitting the ground in Iraq as a platoon leader, all that changed. All that changed. The same battalion commander, the same company commander, obviously the same unit, same organization. It just changed completely in the sense that now essentially nothing was set. Nothing was set. So I'll go through this. There was no set, time to prepare for a mission. I'm not saying there wasn't limited time. I'm saying if I had a mission kicking off in 48 hours, it was largely up to me to decide how to use that 48 hours. Now, we always fall back on our planning. We fall back on our training and our doctrine. So, for lack of a better way of putting it, I knew how to use my time. But the point is, there were, again, obviously, nothing was not staged. Nothing was structured. Nothing was structured anymore. So if I had a mission kicking off in 48 hours, I could start preparing immediately. So there's that. Next, there were no, again in training, every last round is counted, it's set, and that's it. You get X number of rounds for this lane training, situational training, exercise, FTX, whatever. Get to Iraq, and it was, when I was a platoon leader in Iraq, now again, this was early on. I understand things change. I was there in 2004. Things were very different in 2004 than it was later. And when I say very different, let's just say, and I know I'll be getting some of this on video. Let's just say the term Wild West applied. Okay, I'll be explaining that in the future. We had an ASP, an ammunition supply point, on our FOB, forward operating base, and you essentially took what you want. I mean, it wasn't. I'm remembering it that way. Not that that's entirely correct. But the point is, well, and if nothing else, I could go to the battalion S4 and say, I want more 50 caliber link. I want more, 7.62 link. I want my soldiers to have double combat load. I mean, it could be done. Let's just say in general, we were using way more, carrying way more equipment, including ammunition, than we ever did in any type of training environment. And that's just that. And then it goes down the line. You want to talk about other type of mission equipment, special equipment. Again, we pushed to acquire what we thought we needed. And what that resulted in was our vehicles loaded up with far more ammo than any book says is by doctrine or regulation or whatever. Carried more ammunition, had more special equipment for missions. So I'm thinking, yeah, a mission, at least in that respect, makes sense. See, when I'm talking about mission points, I'm going to be
thinking about several different things, okay? But one of the things that pops into my mind when I say, yeah, there'll be mission prep points before the situation kicks off, reflecting the preparations made by that leadership, understanding that when you get into a combat operations and combat, all those set things fall by the wayside. So yeah, anyways, long way of going about saying that I can justify mission prep points, and I think this will make it very interesting. Do players spend mission prep points to get extra ammunition, or do they get mission prep points to get maybe more responsive indirect fire? Maybe. And by the way, what does that reflect? This is not a game, nothing here I'm putting down on paper is meant to be gamey. So again, go back to my platoon leader time. Again, this goes back to mission prep again. I was free to do this. I did it. I didn't have to be told to do it. But before any mission, I would, do my fire plan, my indirect fire plan, plan TRPs, plan my indirect fire plan, which is what I want players to be at least getting a taste of in this simulation tick here. So I made my fire plan. I went up to the battalion TOC, Tactical Operations Center. I got with the fires guys, and I, relayed my plan. I made sure they had my TRPs, made sure they had my fire plan. So my indirect fires were responsive. Would they have been, if I hadn't done any of that preparation, would those fires have been that responsive? Would the fires have been as responsive as they were? Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to say absolutely not, because I don't know, right? I don't believe. I do not believe, and I think that it's a good simulation concept here to show that preparing your indirect fire plan is going to, quote unquote, pay off or may pay off. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to model, simulate, and convey in a rule set like this. So again, mission prep. Do you spend mission prep points for extra TRPs? That's target reference points. Extra targets. Do you spend mission prep points for, and then we get to, do you spend mission prep points for extra training? Do you do extra training to bump up your unit's capabilities, qualities, or some mixture thereof? Yep, all of this can be factored in here, and it'll be very interesting because players should, with different use of mission prep points, every situation should be very different, and the fact that every situation can be part of a larger mission or mini campaign means that every situation can be radically different. So anyways, that's mission prep points. I kind of thought it through, got the idea from others who were talking about this with me, and thought about how I would like to see it implemented. And yeah, I'm generally satisfied with how that might go. I know I still need to get to magnification, IR, and thermal, and how that should be effectively simulated. Now, like I said, I've started to get the very basics of vehicles. I have a note here about observation. Obviously, observation of vehicles is very different. The observation rules that I worked, that I spent quite a bit of time putting together, were always man-sized targets in different types of terrain at different ranges. Vehicles are going to be completely different. Understanding that vehicles, like I said before, vehicles are not going to be more detailed, not going to be as detailed as the troop modeling here. Not going to be. So right now, for testing purposes, I just added a line to my observation charts, which basically says that the observation point costs for a vehicle are now halved again. What this means, in practical sense, this means, let's say, I think in practical terms that means, think roughly 150 meters away through clear terrain, you're looking at a wood line. If there is a personnel team, fire team, even standing in that wood line, no, well, is it standing or not standing now? I can't remember. Okay, I'm going to say standing. I may be wrong about that. But if there's a 4-man fire team standing in a wood line 150 meters away or so, you may just barely not see them. Whereas if you have one vehicle in a wood line 150 meters away, you will probably see the vehicle. And I just realized right now, I hadn't considered this, that again, for personnel, it's critical to the modeling here that I have an up and a down posture. Now I realize that if I'm going to consider very different observation values basically for vehicles, then I'm going to have to allow for vehicle camouflaging. So yeah, I'll have to do that. Okay, so that's just the start of how I'm going to be handling vehicles. There's more there. What is this? Yeah, cumulative. Yep. Okay, vehicle machine guns are different than basically dismounted machine guns. I already started factoring that in. I basically added to my tables, I added another line that represents machine guns. The vehicle mounted, actually I started with vehicle mounted machine guns are a much more stable firing platform, and so their firing profile is going to be different. They're going to maintain firepower at a longer range basically. Then I realized, ooh, wait a minute, especially for today, I have to model. It's not just vehicle mounted now. It's coaxial machine guns, which is what I'm thinking about here. Then there's all of the vehicle mounted weapons that are on basically pintles, on top of vehicles, 50 cal, and have to account for not just heavy weapons, because we mounted saws, SWAT automatic weapons. We mounted saws on vehicles in Iraq, saws, 240s, and 50 cals, and Mark 19s. So all of those are going to have to be accounted for at one point or another. So then I was thinking, well, you know, if a soldier is in a turret with hands on, let's say, a 50 cal that's mounted, that is, in game terms, that's comparable to a 50 cal on a tripod on the ground, set into the ground. I may change my mind about that, but I'm going to say in simulation game terms, that's about the same. But obviously coaxial machine gun is very different, a very different case. So I've already started integrating, adding basically the vehicle mounted machine guns, by which I mean the coaxial machine guns. All right. An idea to make things interesting. Well, it's not just to make things interesting, to make things a bit challenging, and to create the proper setting of contemporary combat, considering some really fully developed ROE rules, and possibly VP or victory point penalties for violations of ROE. You know, should this be handled in situations, special notes, but situation notes, or should there actually be baseline rules for this? Not sure. Just thinking about that. Yeah. This is huge. These are 25-meter hexes. I need to get to machine guns, get to the beaten zones for machine guns. And there basically is there's no question for this. I'm going to get back into the dig out. It's been years since I have looked at the machine gun manuals, doctrinal manuals. So I will be digging those out again and re-looking at beaten zones. Basically, machine guns, it's at this scale and scope, it's just inconceivable that the fire effects of a machine gun are confined to a 25-meter hex at any range. So going to have to get back to beaten zones. I say get back to beaten zones because years ago, when I was taking a close look at a lot of different miniatures rule sets, they seem to address beaten zones more than I have seen hex encounter games do that. Just an observation, though. Communications with networks, nets, interesting concept. How to do communications. I know there's one approach. Develop basic command control rules and have communications, kind of a modifier off of that. As you can tell by the inflection in my voice, I'm not really interested in that approach. I'm more interested in the idea of how many networks is the leadership monitoring and operating off of. I know when I was a Bradley platoon leader, it was incredibly important network management, basically, right? So there were I can't even remember all the details, but it was, if you think about it, the driver and the gunner inside my Bradley had to monitor, um, had to be able to monitor something, but not too much, right? The other Bradley commanders in my platoon had to monitor something, but they couldn't monitor too much, or you didn't want them monitoring too much in order to create confusion. And finally, I, as the platoon leader, monitored so much, but did not or shouldn't be monitoring too much that it interferes with command and control, situational awareness. Maybe it's tying communications to situational awareness and not command control. That at least sits better. All right. That just came right off the top of my head. But I was thinking, okay, it's very interesting to get back to my example. So if you think about it, I'm the platoon leader. I'm on my Bradley. The moment I dismount, first of all, when I'm on the Bradley, oh man, I'm trying to remember. I had 2 nets going in my headset at once. Multiple nets programmed, of course. But basically, I had programmed, battalion net, or battalion ops net, battalion fires net, the company net, the platoon net, probably programmed the nets for the adjacent platoons. All of that programmed. What am I monitoring? Probably monitoring, again, I think it was 2 in the headset at one time. So I think it was obviously platoon and company nets, I think. But yeah, so when I dismounted, my RTO, radio telephone operator, dismounts with me with a dismount man pack radio. And it becomes basically it's a completely different comm situation, right? But what I'm getting at, though, is that back on the Bradleys, the moment I dismount and my comm situation change, my communications situation changes because I'm dismounted, the platoon sergeant immediately takes over and knows. I mean, it's not something trained for. The platoon sergeant who stays on the Bradleys immediately takes over and has to take over monitoring what I was monitoring as the platoon leader on my Bradley. So basically, to put it really simply, and I'm trying to remember the detail, I think when I dismounted, I was limited to the platoon net. Not limited to, because they're still programmed into the man pack radio. But I dismount, I'm monitoring and communicating on one net, the platoon net, obviously. And I think the platoon sergeant immediately jumps up to the battalion or the company net, possibly even the battalion net, depending on the situation. But anyways, the platoon sergeant bumps up and takes over what I was doing on the Bradley, and then the platoon sergeant is pushing to me what's going on from the company and possibly the battalion nets. Again, depending on the situation. So while I'm monitoring and pushing, communicating on the platoon net, the platoon sergeant is relaying to me the most important stuff of what's happening higher, which is it becomes a very interesting dynamic, because that platoon sergeant is now filtering for me on the ground, which is, again, this is what takes all the training, standing operating procedures, and so on and so forth to allow all of this to happen effectively. And you develop SOP for what the platoon sergeant pushes to me and keeps me informed of as I'm on the ground with the dismounted infantry. So anyways, all of that is why I was thinking, that is the reason why. I mean, those are all huge challenges. Why not incorporate those into the game, into the simulation game, if it can be done within the design approach philosophy already established here. May not be able to be done at all. Don't know. I'll think about it. I edited it out. I had a before I called it a casualty pause. Basically, whenever you resolve a casualty factor marker and you discover, you as the platoon / patrol leader basically get the report that one of your units on the battlefield here has taken one or more casualties, the unit is automatically marked with another +1 AM action marker, +1 AM. And I was talking about that as a casualty pause, reflecting a brief casualty assessment and basically to reflect that first responder buddy aid. But I realized just thinking, reviewing in my mind this different testing and experimentation here on the board, I realized that that's not really necessary because in the time scale here, those casualties have already been taken, and so the casualty assessment, first responder stuff has already basically already happened by the time you as the platoon leader, patrol leader have been informed of the casualty. Understand, I guess I've never really, there are a lot of fundamental ideas that I've never actually explained the rationale and what's behind them. I've just said that I've changed things from what I consider to be convention. I don't think convention is too strong of a word. So a set turn structure, a fixed turn structure, is gone. I'm not going to be able to go into detail. I do definitely plan to go into these in more detail, and I'll always have opportunity to go into these in more detail as I record plays of the action here. But basically, a turn structure is out because at this scale and scope, there is no what I called before universal reset of anything. I said a turn structure works perfectly fine at higher echelons and higher scope, higher scale. But at this scale and scope, there is no universal reset, and so therefore rules should not reflect any type of universal reset. The most obvious universal reset is units now reacquire their full movement allowance and or combat value. That there is no universal reset here. Units just flow through one action period after another. Really, play flows through one action period after another, and it is not the same thing to say that, well, the action period here is now the turn, because every action period is entirely different, and there is again no universal reset. So units flow through action periods. The only reason for grouping 4 action periods into an action cycle is only to basically marker management, basically to show the general amount of time that a unit has focused or devoted to a particular type of action. Yeah, that's it. So the 4 action periods of an action cycle, again, are only to distinguish when action markers are removed. So it is a time management thing, but it's not a turn. It is a time management, yes, it's not a turn. All right. So I edited out the casualty pause. Oh yeah, again, the other thing, yeah, I went off on a tangent of the no fixed turn structure. That was an example of one of the things that I threw out, and I'm not sure I really explained what the rationale was in too much detail. I remember discussing it, but I'm not sure it really came across. So the other thing is what I call delayed combat results. First of all, delayed combat results are absolutely critical, because we all know we all know that the exact results of a combat, of a fire, of a contact, of targets being hit, the exact results are not known immediately. They're not known immediately to either side. There's always some type of delay of one sort or another, and it's only a question of, how impractical is it to kind of track the delay. Well, it's working. Basically, you fire, you generate firepower against a hex, you drop that casualty factor marker, which corresponds to the amount of firepower you're generating on that hex, and then the target player has to basically take an action to resolve that combat. And so first of all, the general idea of a player, first of all, there's the question, why should a player have to spend an action to find out a combat result? That a combat result that the player didn't even sort of ask for. Well, if you're a target player, obviously you didn't ask for it. But the idea is you as the platoon/patrol leader are making some particular effort. You're getting on the radio, you're moving to a different position to see something different. You're doing something to figure out the status of the units in that hex. The casualty factor is there because you have a general essay of where bullets are flying and what hexes are receiving fire. But again, you don't know the exact results. So the player spends an action to resolve the combat, to find out what happened, and to allow the player to give the unit or units in that hex, more things to do, i.e. more orders, more direction. So the casualty factor marker represents again the delay in knowing for sure what the results of a combat that is firing that has already taken place, what the results were. It's working out in one way or another. It's working out strangely. I didn't even think that this would work out as well as it is. Okay. Target takes. Oh yeah, this was huge. This was a huge change that I got to this week when I was again reviewing all of this testing and experimentation. This is huge. There again, basically there was some time disconnect. So basically, if a unit, let's say a unit here, expends 4 action points to drop max firepower on a target here, the firer is marked with a +4 action marker, meaning that for, simplistically, I'm sorry, I can't say simplistic. Basically, for the next 4 action periods or a full action cycle, this unit is committed to continuing to, to keeping up a focused fire on this hex. Keeping up focused fire on this hex at the expense of doing much else. It's not that the unit can't do anything else, but it's not going to do much else. And what happened, what I noticed is that what happens if this unit sitting here, like it is here, has no action marker on it? So you drop the, where is it? You drop the casualty factor there. And I found this odd, like in the very next action period, the target player, blue player, can go to resolve this combat and may get the result, even though red is still marked for a whole 3 more action periods after that. So basically what I thought was, if blue, basically the target hex needs to be marked, will now have to be marked with a plus action marker equal to, at least equal to the firing unit. So in this case, if blue starts with no action marker and red expends 4 action points to fire here, in addition to dropping the CF marker, the target hex will be marked with the same 4 AP marker, plus 4 AP marker, to correspond to the firing, which means that for the next 4 action periods, this is all going on. And blue player effectively cannot intervene to find out the results before all the fire is already over, so to speak. Not entirely necessarily realistic, but what do you call it? A compromise I think that will need to be made to have continuous time with discontinuous action. Okay, so that was fairly huge. It wasn't. That's going to change things, I think. Okay, so that was big. Yeah. Okay. When it comes to point targets, and especially AT combat or anti-tank combat. Well, that's interesting. I'm calling it AT combat even though it's going to include all vehicles. Huh. I'll think about that later, but AT combat. Actually, I think I'm going to take a break now. I'll pick up again at a later time.